I
What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Nissim, and with me, as always, is my main man, Mr. David Fuchs.
hey,
He's looking good, looking sharp. Good beard day. I'm a little
you too.
shaggy, but whatever.
No, you're looking good
We're
with the salt and
we're
pepper.
we're shiny. We're shiny. I feel like the salt is starting to overtake the pepper, though.
Oh, yeah, no, I would still say that's a very, very strong salt and pepper beard. I tell you this before, and I'm not just saying this, I happen to really like your beard. I think you have a very strong salt and pepper look.
The salt and pepper look is good. It is, but there's sometimes I see myself in a picture. I'm like, damn, you look old as hell. Would you get so gray? And then there are times like when I put like student videos in a Google Drive and it's like a little snapshot from like right at the beginning of the video. And sometimes
Yeah.
the lighting hits it right and makes it look still kind of dark. And I'm like, yeah, still got it.
Yeah, it's all about the lighting.
But let's talk a little bit about this theme, which I think at this point everybody's kind of maybe the dust has settled, right? So the end of the March window was March 19th. So they tested from 12 to 19. And it's been a couple weeks since the exam. And for everybody who failed, that initial you know result saying that you failed really, really hurts. And I think for a week or two, it's just a raw, emotional, "Ugh, I
No,
can't
it
believe I
sucks.
failed."
That first couple days, I don't I would say, maybe up to a week. It's terrible. It's horrible. And I
It,
feel for everybody that's going through it.
it's horrible. And it's like you sit back and then you start running. What did I do? Where did this go wrong? I thought I did what I should have done. Like, and I think the worst one is, David, is when you're going through the exam and you're answering questions going, nailed it, nailed it, nailed it, nailed it. And then looking at your section score and like being deep in the red.
Well, you always said if you think you passed the exam, or if you think it was easy, or if you think you got a lot of these questions right, you probably were the one that you're the target, the prime target for what they were going for to trick.
Yeah.
And you probably didn't fail.
Yeah.
You always said, you're like, if you think you failed, or if you think you were 50-50, you have a better shot than if you came out thinking you passed.
I, I always felt like coming out of most exams going, I think I did enough. I hope I did enough.
But it's 50-50.
But there's always some questions, and I'm like, did I apply that concept right? Did I get it right? Was I thinking about it? Did they get like, did I get tricked? Did they get me? Fuck, am I the sucker? And that is always the feeling that I would always walk out of an exam with. And a lot of people, you'll listen to this, but you'll go through, you're like, oh my God, I got this. And I actually have a student that I had in March that was this person that went through, did a bunch of practice tests, refused, like we worked together, but really refused to follow anything in my system. Then they had a couple personal things go on. And, they're, I'm just taking practice tests. I learned so much from the practice tests. I'm using an app. I can study in bed. And I'm like, this is just not the best way to go about it. Let's consider some other things. And then it was just like, once the degree of difficulty turned up a little bit, they're going for the answer that they know, not realizing it that they were just drawn in because the context changed and they kind of got sucked into that answer. So now at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, all right, well, now what? Okay, now I got over that. Like, clearly I did something wrong, right? Clearly the way that I studied didn't work. Now what? So, like when you're talking, David, to people who have failed the exam, first thing that you're talking to them about, if they're coming and say, I failed, I don't know what to do. Do you have any advice for me?
Call Joe Nissom.
I mean, obviously, first things
But
first.
No, I think you and I always talk about it, that there's a number of reasons why people fail, and most people probably hit all of the reasons we say in some capacity or another. I think the number one thing, head and shoulders above everything else, I fell victim to this the first time I took it. Most people that I talk to, I think probably fall into the same category as you probably underestimated the exam, and you probably also overestimated your ability to learn the concepts in the plan that you put together. So I think that's the number one thing. I think people go in thinking that this exam is going to be a lot easier than it is, even though a lot of people are told by, I mean, I hear it a lot that, yeah, that exam is one of the hardest you're going to take. That exam is extremely difficult. No matter how many times you hear it, no matter who you hear it from, I think a lot of people are going to go into it, especially in finance, where, listen, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of egos in the industry. And there's a lot of people that studied for I hear it. They love saying like, "Yeah, I studied for 2 weeks, but then I passed the Series 7 exam or whatever." And I think they come into this exam with that mentality, and they get smacked really hard.
Hmm.
So I think that's the number one thing.
I agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that just based on the nature of our business, which is finance, we're money people, we're salespeople, we're deal people, we're competitive people. And so we want to believe that we have Superman like abilities, right?
You
I
also
can
want
study.
to,
And I want to
yeah,
tell that story at a cocktail party, man. Oh, I took the CFP, I passed it in 4 weeks.
exactly. A lot of people, and they think that they can.
Right. And you know, A+ for confidence, D- for being real.
Delusion ability.
Yeah, like you're just that's delusional because you have to respect the exam. So I couldn't agree more. What else do you think besides like I underestimated this exam? I didn't
Yeah,
think it could be this hard. Where else do you see like I think I agree with you. I think that's number one. Where
yeah.
what would you put as number two?
I would say, and again, I'm telling you this from experience. And then also use just from what I see, but I'm telling you this is because like I fell victim to it. It's going in with a bad strategy, or I don't want to say a bad strategy, but I want to just say maybe not sufficient planning, thinking that I can get away with this and I can succeed by doing X, which is typically, you know, taking a lot of questions and memorizing a lot of stuff and not necessarily actually learning the concepts which you need to on this exam. So I think, a bad preparation schedule, and then to go into that is also overestimating, or actually I should say underestimating how fatigued you're actually going to be on the actual exam day.
Yeah,
I don't think people think about it like as intense as it actually is going to be.
yes, I think that you're hitting on two really important things, and I want to talk about that first thing you said, which is it's a bad plan. When we have limited resources, it kind of triggers your planning kind of thing in your brain, right? So, for example, if I'm going camping and I'm going camping in a remote area, I'm walking in as prepared as possible because there's no backup plan. Right? So if like I'm going somewhere and I know that no, okay, I gotta pack food. Okay, let me think about this. Now I gotta bring some extra food, or I gotta have my can opener, this lighter. I'm gonna bring this gas stove. I'm gonna bring an extra propane tank. And we tend to plan when there's very limited resources. When there's a lot of resources, we tend to plan very poorly. Okay.
Because you think everything's there just set for you.
Because everything is there and then there's a backup. Okay. Now, here's why this is important. When I took the exam in 2008, there was one review program, Brett Denko. That was it. Kaplan wasn't in the game. Maybe Dalton. I should say probably Dalton was in the game, but I didn't really know about them at the time. but there wasn't anybody doing this at the college level. The Dalton textbooks, as far as I knew, didn't really exist or exist in the way that they do now. There was no online Q bank. There was no video resources. There was no YouTube, or YouTube was actually very, very new or in its infancy. There, if you go in and type CFP review on Google, there wasn't 5,000 returned items. You couldn't type anything on YouTube. So when people took the exam, they really had to plan it out and figure it out when they were going to study. There was no backup plan. So when you have a lot of resources, you're not sitting there going, "Oh, I need to plan all of this out." So sometimes you'll even your bad strategy will end up leading you to you succeeding. And if that happened to you on series 7 because you just bought, "Oh my god, I bought this extra test bang 3 days before the exam. Thank God that I did." Because that's what probably got me over the hump. Now you're taking that into this exam thinking that that's going to be the case because, again, there's a lot of resources. I don't need to do as much learning. I can get away with it. So I think that happens a lot. Okay. The second point that you brought up, David, was most people underestimate how tiring it's going to be. Not
Oh
just the
my God.
material, but how
Yes, a
tired
hundred.
you're going to be. And I think a lot of us underestimate fatigue, and I think all of us can we can kind of relate to this if you've ever started a new exercise plan. Like if it's January at the beginning of the year, I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to go to CrossFit. I'm going to go to Barry's boot camp. I'm going to go to Soul Cycle, or I'm going to get on my Peloton, or I'm going to start running." You're like, "Oh, I'm going to run 5 miles every day." You don't realize how tired you're going to be from the previous 5 miles before you run the next 5 miles. And everybody knows if you don't factor that in, you're going to get demotivated or you're going to end up getting hurt.
Yeah, and I think when you say that the fatigue aspect of it, it's like I said earlier, it's that on the exam because it is very fatiguing and intense, but it's also throughout the process as well. I don't think people realize how tired they're going to be and how consumed they're going to be studying for the exam. And partly it goes back to the first thing. They underestimated how intense this exam is going to be, which in turn underestimates how intense the preparation process is going to be. But early in the morning, late at night, day after day, your mind is going to be exhausted. I remember a couple of weeks leading up to the exam, my head was just spinning. And I
Mm.
was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this because I am just exhausted.
I agree with you. And I think anytime you're doing anything like this, you have to factor in the fatigue. And that's why I'm so big on sleep and planning because it's so easy to waste time and then push yourself into a cramming scenario. And the cramming scenario is highly effective in college. I used to stay up in the library all night and go and take a final, but that final covered this much information, right? You cramming for the CFP as an adult with a job and kids, you got
Mhm.
to be nuts to even try it.
Right.
And please, that's not a challenge. Like, there's no glory in doing that. Like, "Oh my God, I
No.
killed myself for a month and, and then I passed the test." Well, good for you, but you just probably burned 2, 3, 4 months of work time because you're so burnt out. And I can tell you after I took CFA, the third level, and trust me, this is my ego is so fucking bad that I wanted to do CFA, all 3 levels, while building a business in under 24 months because I wanted to say it. However, if I look back
Egomaniac.
at the year that I had after I passed level 3, it was one of my worst years of business because I was so burnt out.
Mhm.
Was it worth it? No, because I built so many shitty habits in my work life. And then I also ended up gaining a bunch of weight because all I did was study and eat shitty and do. And look, I was fortunate that my study techniques were as good as they were, and my ability to study were as good as it was, and my ability to focus, but it came at the cost of so many other things. So when I look back at that time, as well as much of like, wow, I got myself through it, was it worth the way that I did it? No, it was not. I did it probably in the worst way possible, but I can tell you that it I would not wish that upon anybody else. And for some of you guys can't have a work year like that. I was lucky that I was single. I didn't have dependents. I didn't have children. I didn't have a spouse that was depending on me. If I tried to do that now, that shit would not fly because I wouldn't have a life outside of it. Like, and that's a stinky thing. So, to think about how lucky I was to be able to do it in that time where there was no consequences, for most of you, that's not even an option. So, kind of think about that as you're going through this and you're reviewing. Think about, did I underestimate this exam and give myself too little of time? Or did I give myself a whole lot of time, but then I really wasn't disciplined when I actually was doing stuff? I wasn't sitting down and being focused. I wasn't concentrating. I wasn't putting 2 days on top of each other. Did I actually just memorize a whole bunch of stuff, or did I really, really, really try? Look back and figure that part out. And if you're not sure how to do that, you know, chat with David or myself. Like, that's what we're here for, is to help you figure out where this thing went wrong. So again, guys, if you feel like, you're not sure where this thing went wrong, DM David or myself. You can email us. Our emails are on our LinkedIn profiles, and we can kind of help you figure out where this thing went wrong. Because the worst thing to do is not to fail the exam. It's to do the same thing you did the first time and then expect that you're going to pass the second time around. Because trust me, the third time you take the test is really, really hard to pass because now you've probably invested a year and a half of your life into CFP. So with
That's
that
right.
being said, we'll end right here and we will see you guys on our next episode.